Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast video review. Today we jump into the Psychic Awakening with the first book, Phoenix Rising. Eldar, Dark Eldar, and Ynnari. Ooh, let's begin!
The Dark King.
So all of you must be really excited. Games Workshop has been hyping this series of books up over the last couple of months on their Warhammer community site. Today we have an initial dive in. Now there is a lot of content in this book for a single video, so I will be doing a variety of different videos so you can watch it. Of course, Dark Eldar are probably one of my favorites, so Drukhari, my thing, so I will be spending a little bit extra time on them in a full video and in the Eldar with all the different stuff that's in here. This video is a sort of overview. We're going to see quickly what you can find in the book, my general thoughts, and how I feel about it. And I want to know how you feel. Are you happy and excited about it? I know the base box set is going to be $230 American for the new Drazar, Janezar, the Howling Banshees. So some people have been on the it's very expensive side. Well, let's just say most people have been on the very expensive side. But the books themselves, I'm very excited to dive in. So let's begin with Phoenix Rising. So Phoenix Rising is a really cool book that has a variety of different stories in here. It has the full Phoenix Rising sort of prophecy from the Visionary of Alatok. Gives you your table of contents as normal, your introduction as normal, all that's pretty cool. And then it starts going into the story and the lore about what happened to the Eldari race after the, basically the Gathering Storm. You know, what happened after the Cicatrix Maledictum basically rended open the Imperium, like the space, like the galaxy, in two, cut it in half essentially, and now all this raw psychic energy has essentially really affected the psychically attuned Eldari races in a variety of different ways. So the book itself does a very good job, in my opinion, explaining sort of how Ivrain fits into this, but giving you, as a player, context from each of the Eldari races, the Harlequins, the Azuriani, the Exodites, the Drukhari, right, and the Ynnari, essentially what they have been doing since the fall of Cadia and the opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum. And of course, they sort of call this by a new word, the Dathedian. Dathedian? Basically, it's a great rift. They have their own sort of name for it. The stories are really cool. There's a really fun story in here that showcases how Urian Rakath, the homunculus, has been able to make Dark Eldar, like shapecraft them to mimic humans and make them look like humans. And it's like a punishment to the Drukhari. They hate it. They feel like humans are apish. And what they do is they basically flesh forms these Dark Eldar into looking like humans and sends them to spy on like the Ynnari and stuff like that, and uses them to infiltrate human settlements and Astra Militarum regiments and stuff. I thought that was really cool. So just a little bit of stuff. This is a really cool map. Now, normally you get to see the galactic map from the point of view of the Imperium. So it's a very bland map, but this is from the point of view of the Eldari. So you've got where all the Craftworlds are in the universe. You see the Cicatrix Maledictum. You see where some of the Necrontyr dynasties are located and things like that. And that was really cool. I really like immersive things like this. If you like the lore, you're going to love this book. It also goes into essentially stories, the fates of the Craftworlds after the fall of Bieltan, and what happened to Yanden. You know, what has happened since then? How have they sort of rallied? What is their focus right now in the galaxy as everything is going dark? You know, Uthway is still doing their things, bringing the fight to chaos. You've got Frozen Stars and Laytok essentially saying, hey, chaos isn't the problem, let's go fight some Necrons. You know, you've got Ivrain essentially trying to unite the Crone Swords, only to find out that that's going to be harder than it seems, and then trying to bring all the different races of the Eldari together. However, Vect is trying to assassinate Ivrain because he's pissed off at her. So there's a lot of cool content in here without all the other spoilers. I'm going to let you read it. Now, other than that, there's of course the Echoes of War missions. I am a huge narrative gamer as well as competitive, so I do enjoy a good series of missions. We have the Wars of the Eldari, essentially how to play games or specific scenarios that replicate key battles in sort of like the time from the Great Rift opening up. And it's cool. They've got, you know, each mission has missions and a set of stratagems. And if you like narrative gaming, that's the sort of thing that's really going to appeal to you. Personally, I'm starting to create a campaign that's for the Patreons. It's going to start in early November. It's a global campaign. You can play against anyone. And this is the kind of thing, as a campaign creator, that I really like. Taking stratagem ideas, mission parameter ideas, deployment zones, and I take those ideas and sort of create my own when I'm doing campaigns, which is really cool. If you'd like to join the Patreon campaign, check us out on Patreon, and it's available to everybody who helps the channel out as a thank you for your support. Then we have the nitty gritty. And this is what everyone's been waiting for. But what makes the Eldar and the Drukhari and the Ynnari stuff different than what we have already? Well, Games Workshop has been hinting at this on their community page. However, first and foremost, we have the Craftworlds. You start with Children of the Stars, and then a couple of points changes, I think, for Janezar. She's a little over 100 points. Howling Banshee's 9 points per model plus a power sword. It's like 13 points a model or whatever. I don't know what they are in the codex right now, but you can tell me down below. Cool Azuriani name generator if you really want to figure out how to name all your Howling Banshees individually. Cool. Then we go into Janezar. A whole page of story for Janezar and her new self, like new model, looks amazing. I love the feel that they got, like that demonic visage of her Banshee mask and the pose for her, you know, literally leaping, you know, the model's held up by the hair, which is really cool. And then her rules. Sad that she didn't get an invulnerable save. A little sad. However, she does make Howling Banshees around her really cool, and we will see a couple of cool things. So let's dive in to, well, Banshees, of course, but let's dive in to what everyone's been waiting for: the powers of the aspect shrines, and build your own Craftworld. Because of the psychic awakening, the Exarchs have essentially had to focus even more in order to not give in to their deepest, darkest desires and obsessions, which means they have to essentially focus on their craft, which is designed to kill in some aspect. You've got Fire Dragons, Dire Avengers, Dark Reapers, Howling Banshees, Swooping Hawks, Striking Scorpions, Shining Spears, Crimson Hunter Exarchs, Warp Spiders, all got a list of 6 new Exarch powers. So every single aspect has a specific like Exarch power that affects them and or their unit that they're in, based on their aspect shrine. And this is something that's in the codex. It's in the book. It's not something that could be mixed or changed in any way. So now, instead of having to pick the one in the book, you can, instead of that one, pick one of these 6. So in total, you'll have 7 to pick from when you're sort of building your army list, which is pretty cool. Now, that also means that it'll change the dynamic of some of these units than what we've seen them in the past. I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to go over them and explain sort of why I think they're such a cool, neat idea. Each one as well comes with a stratagem you can use before the battle begins. And for one command point, you can give them one of these in addition to the one they already have in the codex, which is pretty snazzy. So if you wanted to, for one command point, you're taking a unit of Dark Reapers, like a big 10-man unit of Dark Reapers, have the one that they have on their codex already, and for one command point, add another additional ability that helps them. So that's pretty cool. So let's start with the fire dragons. Now, fire dragons are anti-tank weapons, of course. They have. I'm going to pick one or two that I really like from each list. One of the ones that I like is Dragon's Bite. Whilst this unit contains a fire dragon exarch, at the start of your shooting phase, you can change the type characteristic of this unit's fusion guns to Pistol 1. Do you want your fire dragons to be able to shoot in the shooting phase, even if they're stuck in close combat? Then Dragon's Bite will be your go-to exarch power. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to get into close combat with these fire dragons any time soon. Wall of Fire. When this unit fires Overwatch, a fire dragon exarch equipped with a Dragon's Breath Flamer can make a wall of fire attack. If he does so, instead of shooting with the model, so it means from whatever distance, right? Roll 1d6, and on a 2+, the charging unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So on a 2+, d3 mortal wounds just because you charged through a flamethrower, which is pretty cool. So those are two that I really enjoy that help fire dragons. Dire Avengers, which are is the only the only aspect shrine that's a troop choice. And they got some really cool ones. Bladestorm, while this unit contains an exarch, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon that's not a grenade, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 scores 1 additional hit, allowing Dire Avengers to get a really cool Tesla-like ability with their long-ranged shuriken catapults. Their Avenger shuriken catapults, essentially. Another one that's really cool is Avenging Strikes. Whilst this model contains a Dire Avenger exarch, and any models from this unit have been destroyed, when resolving an attack made by any model in this unit, add 1 to the hit and wound roll. So as soon as you kill one of those Dire Avengers, they all get +1 to hit and +1 to wound, and that's both in shooting and close combat, which is pretty cool. Now I'm highlighting ones that affect the unit, because there are some that affect the exarch directly and some that affect the unit instead of the exarch, just the exarch. And I feel the ones that affect the unit will be usually more powerful and more useful than the ones that affect simply the exarchs themselves. Dark Reapers. They get some really cool ones. So one is called Reign of Death. When this unit's Dark Reaper exarch shoots with a Tempest launcher, you can re-roll the dice to determine the number of shots it makes. Do you like your little minimum squad of Dark Reapers sitting in a corner shooting out of line of sight with his Tempest launcher? Well, make sure that the exarch knows to rain death, so you can re-roll the amount of shots with it, which is pretty snazzy. Long-ranged fire. Whilst this unit contains a Dark Reaper exarch, add 6 inches to the range characteristic of the ranged weapons the models in this unit are equipped with. You feel like your Dark Reapers are always out of range of stuff? Make them an extra 6 inches of range. Why not? As long as the exarch is alive. Howling Banshees are the ones they sort of previewed the most. And I'm only going to go over one that I really, really like in this one, which is called Graceful Avoidance. Whilst this unit contains a Howling Banshee exarch, when a model in this unit would lose a wound in the fight phase, roll a d6. On a 5+, that wound is not lost. So essentially, it gives them a bit of a pseudo-invulnerable save in close combat based on the damage. So they're really good at going up against units that don't do multiple damage in close combat. They're good against stuff that does a lot of just 1 damage, which will allow them to avoid damage easier than not, which is pretty cool. So considering Howling Banshees are a very fragile close combat unit, I like that power the most. Swooping Hawks. Suppressing Fire. When this Swooping Hawk exarch fires Overwatch in an enemy unit, subtract 2 from the charge rolls made from that unit until the end of the phase. That's pretty cool. Means you can screen with them, and if they get charged, it's put them in a forest or something, They don't even have to kill a model in Overwatch. They just shoot Overwatch, and the unit that is charging now has -2 to their charge distance. That can be game winning. Game winning. What evade is whilst this unit contains a swooping hawk exarch, models in this unit have a 5-up invulnerable save. That's pretty snazzy. Then we have striking scorpions, guys with chainswords and Mandy blasters, very close to incubi. Stalker, whilst this unit contains a striking scorpion exarch and it is wholly within or on a terrain feature, they get -1 to be hit. So you want your Elatox striking scorpions to be -2 to hit if they're in cover. That's exciting. This is one of my favorite, and there are a few. The next 1, 2, and 3. So warp spiders, shining spears, and striking scorpions all share this one trait, which is called withdraw, and it's probably one of the most powerful traits for aspect warriors. Are you listening? Are you listening? Are you hearing me right now? Get out your notebooks and your pens. Withdraw. At the end of the fight phase, if this unit contains an exarch and is within 1 inch of any enemy models, so if they're in close combat, this unit can make a fallback move up to 6 inches as if it were your movement phase. And the implications of this is astronomical. It means your opponent charges you, you hold up, you can move away and fall back at the end of the fight phase, which means they can't move at all or do anything else, which means that next turn you don't have to spend any command points to Cruel Deception or to essentially move away and then be able to act as normal. Shining Spears would be able to do the same thing. They fall back, and then afterwards they can move and act as normal. You cannot tie these units down unless you wrap them in the Striking Scorpions. As it comes to Shining Spears, they fly, so you can't really tie them down. And with Warp Spiders, something that is legitimately missing, I don't know if this is a typo or if it's supposed to work this way, their withdrawal, they just are allowed to make a fallback move of up to 6 inches as if with a movement phase, but they do not have to be within 1 inch of an enemy unit. And I think that's deliberate. Makes Warp Spiders a lot faster, so they can essentially move at the end of the fight phase an extra 6 inches, whether they are in combat or not. Jump in and out of cover, in and out of line of sight, up close to the enemy to create more screens away from the enemy. Warp Spiders have all of a sudden become the annoying, fast-moving things that we remember from back in the day. So, another one that I wanted to show for Striking that's for Striking Scorpions. So, the second one I want to show off for Shining Spears is Swooping Dive. While this model contains a Shining Spear exarch, when a charge roll is made, add 1 to the result. So if you have a BL-ton Shining Spear unit that can come out of reserve and get +2 to their charge roll, and then have Swooping Dive, it gives them an extra +1 to their charge roll. That means they're only needing 6s to charge out a Deep Strike. Can make them very reliable at getting to where you need them the most in the heat of battle, which is pretty cool. Then we have the last one I want to talk about, Warp Spider Exarchs, which will be Web of Deceit. Once per battle, in your movement phase, if this unit contains a Warp Spider Exarch, it can make a warp jump instead of moving normally. Remove the unit from the battlefield and set it up at the end of that phase anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Essentially, it gives you a Veil of Darkness, it gives you a Teleport Strike, a Gate. Essentially, you can pick up the unit once per game and Deep Strike it. It doesn't matter what turn it is, and it's that same turn. So great for late game objective holding, you know, that is pretty cool, like when you think of it that way. And last but not least, Crimson Hunter Exarchs. Okay, so this is a little thing that I wanted to shout out to everybody out there. If you thought Crimson Hunter Exarchs couldn't get any worse, oh my goodness. I have nightmares of 3 Crimson Hunter Exarchs in every Ynnari list, and I fear that this will be even worse than it is right now, thanks to these little rules right here that I'm reading right now. Sometimes I don't understand what the playtesters are thinking when they come up with this stuff. However, if you're an Eldar player, you are going to be really happy about these, because Iron Hands weren't strong enough. So let's make Exarchs, Crimson Hunt Exarchs that already people use anyway, really cool. Okay. So, I'm going to give you all of them because they're all amazing, because a Crimson Hunter Exarch is one single model, and so all of these affect the model, and that's the whole unit as well. So it's not like the other ones where you have to pick and choose if you want it just to affect the Exarch or to affect the models. This one affects the model, so the Exarch. Aerial Predator. Okay, when resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon against a unit that can fly, add 1 to the damage characteristic. Cool. So you thought pulse lasers with 3 damage were cool? Now they're 4 damage against things that can fly. Great. Remember, you can have this for 1 command point on one of your Crimson Hunters, because you can only do it once per battle. You can have 1 Crimson Hunter that can have the normal one that's reroll wounds against, or is it reroll ones to hit or something, but the normal one plus 1 of these. Evade, 5+ invulnerable save. That's actually kind of cool. Makes them a little more survivable against high AP, multiple damage weapons. Hawkeye. This model does not suffer the penalty for moving and firing, which is pretty cool. Means that it already hits on 2s, so now it's just hitting on 2s, rolling 1s. So very accurate firepower. Strafing run. When resolving attack made with a ranged weapon against a unit that cannot fly, reroll wounds of 1, which means now it has some cool abilities against stuff that doesn't fly, which can be really handy against land vehicles that don't have fly, for example. Eyes of Cain ignores cover, so basically don't get the benefit for cover saving throw because it ignores cover. That's probably one of the weaker ones. And then this one, aerial maneuvering. When this model moves, you can pivot it up to 180 degrees before it moves, instead of 90 degrees. Oh, come on. I had to pick it up after throwing it, but that's ridiculous. Not only do they have Vector Dancer that allows them to move 90 degrees after moving, now they can spin 180 degrees before they move. Give me a break. Okay, well that's pretty cool. Other than that, I think we're going to continue to see Crimson Hunter Exarchs everywhere. Another cool thing they added, Runes of Fortune, which is a new psychic tree available to Farseers and Warlocks, which is pretty cool. So it's anyone for any Psyker. So any Craftworld Psyker can instead know one of these powers, except you sub it out for Smite. So you get rid of your Smite psychic power, you can add one of these Runes of Fortune powers. And Runes of Fortune are essentially runes that have come about because they've had to be used. They have to protect themselves more now that they are in the psychic maelstrom of the Cicatrix Maledictum. And getting rid of the Smite means that you can have dedicated buff and sort of debuff characters that are designed as force multipliers instead of damage dealers. Now, Smite is a very powerful power, as you might know, especially in large numbers. But as it goes, sometimes with Eldar specifically, casting Smite can get harder and harder as you go along. So you want to cast Smite with something like Ivrain, for example, Cat Lady, or Farseers, or stuff that has pluses or rerolls to the psychic test without having to rely on that 5+, because that's harder and harder. So something I like is that a lot of these psychic powers cast on a value of 4. So even though you're getting rid of your Smite, you're getting a very easy to cast psychic power that you can put on Warlocks. Warlocks especially is what I'm thinking, because they're pretty neat. So, Fateful Divergence. Pick a friendly craft unit within 6. You can reroll a single hit, wound, or save roll, which is pretty cool. So you put on a character, make them a little tanky, put on like a fire prism, make it, don't have to use command points as much, that sort of thing. Witch Strike. Warp charge value of 4. Until the start of your next psychic phase, add 2 to the damage characteristic of the melee weapon for the Psyker. So if you want to make a cool this Psyche is melee weapon. So you can basically have like a Farseer go in and have D3 plus 2 damage or something like that. Okay, cool. That's probably going to be one of the least used ones. Ghost Walk. Value of 6. So this is, they're only, 3 or 2s, 3 or 6s. You only have up to a value of 6, so very easy to cast. Select a friendly craftable unit within 6. When a charge rolled is made for that unit, add 2 to the result. So remember how we were combining Bieltan Shining Spears out of Deep Strike with the stratagem for +2 to charge, +1 for the Exarch, and now with a Psychic Power, it's another +2. So you get +5 to your charge rolls. What? That is amazing. And the cool thing is it happens in the Psychic phase, which means you can Deep Strike things in, or you can even do it with Wraithguard, for example, and give them a 7-inch charge off a Deep Strike. With a command point reroll, that suddenly becomes a very appealing option as a strategic element for Eldari Craftworld players. Number 4, Crushing Orb. Pick a character within 18 inches, roll 3 dice on a 5+, suffer a mortal wound for each 5+, basically. So it's kind of like the Chaos one, except theirs is on 4+, and this is 5+, and it's only against characters. So it's cool. It's like a targetable smite, which is kind of neat. Focus Will, and it goes off on a 4, which is great. Focus Will is on a 6. Pick a Craftworld Psycho within 6. Next Psychic phase, any Deny the Witch, basically from then on, any Deny the Witch, add 2 to the total. So you can make, like, that would be pretty cool. Make Eldrad have +2 to deny rolls. It can mean that you can really try and stop some nasty psychic powers if you're running up against like a Magnus and Morty or, Armon or things like that. It gives you like some actual control of the psychic power and shuts some of these psychers down that you need to shut down. And last but not least, Impair Senses. Select an enemy unit within 18, its charge value of 6. Until the start of your next psychic phase, when that unit is chosen to shoot with, models can only shoot the closest visible unit, unless the target's within 18 of them. You can legitimately pick a unit like a Castellan, go, you can only shoot the closest unit now. It doesn't matter what else is in the list. You blind them, as long as, which can be crazy powerful, especially if you've split your army up and most of your striking part of the army is, and maybe Doom and Jink didn't help combine, like you can't combine it, but that does. You can literally impair the senses of a really nasty unit that can kill all your Talos and have your Talos more than 18 inches away and have like a throwaway unit in front. Be like, you can't shoot the Talos because you can't see the Talos. Like, that is probably one of the most powerful psychic powers at a competitive level, which is pretty dang snazzy. And then we'll dive into the Craftworld attributes. Like the Space Marine Codex, a lot of players were really excited to be able to pick from a variety of different chapter attributes to mix and match to create their own chapters in order to sort of bring their own story and their lore to life, as well as abuse some really cool rules and mix them and match them and make cool successive chapters that then you can mix and match with some of the supplements, which make some really powerful combinations. So Games Workshop in Phoenix Rising has given that to Craftworld players in the form of Craftworld attributes. A selection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 21, 22 different mini Craftworld attributes. And what you can do is create your own Craftworld, whichever one you want, and pick 2 of these in any combination you like. That's pretty cool. So let's go over them real quick. This is going to be like a spin through, so if you miss something, just go back. If you like one, let me know in the description down below. I personally feel that this is awesome, and I really like this. Children of Cain, any aspect warriors, an unmodified roll is 6, add 1 to damage in close combat. So any aspect warriors in close combat, roll a 6 to wound, +1 damage. Can be really cool with Howling Banshees, for example, or Striking Scorpions, or anything really. Children of Morai Heg, when resolving attack by model, at which at least half its starting numbers of models have been destroyed. So in a unit that has less than half its models left, add 1 to hit roll. Cool. Returned models to a unit still considered to have been destroyed. Okay, cool. So essentially, as soon as you lose half your models, you start getting +1 to hit. Nice. Children of Prophecy. When a psychic test is taken from a model, each individual dice roll of a 1 is treated as a 2. So you can't perils on double 1s. Interesting. Children of the Open Skies. That means you literally couldn't fail any of the casting on a 4 runes of fortune. That's pretty neat. Children of the Open Skies. When a unit with this attribute, the fly, advances, add 2 to the move. Nice. So advance super fast. Diviners of Fate all have 6 up invulnerable save. So that's the Uthway. That's sort of like the Uthway trait, but not really. Means that you can give all your tanks like Falcons and Night Spinners and Wave Serpents a 6+ invulnerable save. That actually is quite powerful. Expert Crafters, and even all the flyers too. When a unit with this attribute fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot or fight with, you can reroll a single hit roll and you can reroll a single wound roll. So sort of like Salamander's style. Cool. Grim. When a morale test is taken from a unit with this attribute, you can reroll the dice. Hard for them to run away. Fair enough. I think that's one of the least important ones. Hail of Doom. When resolving an attack made by a shuriken weapon against an enemy unit within 12 inches, improve the armor penetration of that weapon by 1. Cool. Except if you roll a 6+, it's still minus 3 AP. That's pretty neat. That's like the Necron one. So plus 1 AP at 12 inches, which is pretty much the range of most shuriken weaponry anyway. But that could be really powerful against like Marines and stuff. Headstrong. When a charge roll is made by a unit with this attribute, add 1 to the result. So now we're at plus 6 to your charge roll with Shining Spears. That's deep. Oh no, because then they're Bieltan, so you couldn't do that. So you could still do a plus 4, even if they weren't Bieltan. So you wouldn't even need to use a stratagem. You could just use Headstrong, get the plus 1 to charge innately, get a plus 1 to charge on a Shining Spears innately, get a plus 2 to charge from the Psychic Power. So now you're looking at plus 4 to charge. Cool. Hunters of Ancient Relics. Add 1 to the attacks characteristics of models whilst they're within 3 inches of any objective markers. Cool, so they're good at holding objectives. Martial Citizenry. Guardians reroll 1s to hit. Nice. Masterful Shots. Ignore cover. So you can make your whole army ignore cover. That would be really good for like Night Spinners and things like that. Masters of Concealment. Anything that's 12 inches away, treat as being in cover. So very similar to what we saw Raven Guard have. Mobile Fighters. If you disembark from a transport, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 in that in a turn that you disembark. So disembark from Wave Serpent, reroll hit rolls of 1. Okay, that's pretty cool. Savage Blades. Reroll hit rolls of 1 if you charged, or heroically intervene in close combat. Now, this is probably one of the most powerful ones. And by good measure, it says, if you select this Craftworld attribute, you cannot select a second. So that's called Strike and Fade, and it's a 2-parter. Units with this attribute can charge during a turn in which they fell back. Pretty cool. Means that things like Shining Spears and whatnot, it means it very efficient. You don't need command points to do that sort of thing. You can fall back and still charge. Really cool. When a model with this attribute that is not within 3 inches of an enemy unit makes a consolidation move, it does not have to end that move closer to the nearest enemy model. That is really powerful. Means that you can move in, charge, attack, and then if you kill something and you're not within 3 inches of an enemy, instead of having to move 3 inches towards the enemy, you can move 3 inches away from the enemy, or 3 inches sideways, or whatever it is, to go to a different target, or get behind line of sight. Or I cannot tell you how powerful being able to move and not be forced to move in a certain direction is to get onto an objective, for example. That's really powerful. Students of Vol. Each vehicle model with this attribute regains 1 wound at the start of each of your turns. Cool, awesome. Gives them quantum shielding. Living metal. Superior Shurikens. Add 4 inches to the range of shuriken weapons. Cool. So now shuriken catapults are 16 inches, and Avenger shuriken catapults are 22 inches. Neat. Vengeful Blades. Considering they have, going back to that, considering they have the ability to advance and still shoot with fleet of foot or whatever it is, that's pretty neat. Battle Focus, that's what it's called. Vengeful Blades. When resolving an attack against Chaos, in a turn in which this model made a charge, you can reroll the hit roll. So reroll hits against all Chaos. So very unique. If your friend plays Chaos, you are going to crush him. Yeah, all my guys just get reroll hits in close combat against you because you're Chaos. Awesome. Warding Runes. When the model loses a wound as a mortal wound, on a 5+, that wound is not lost. So 5+, ignore mortal wounds. Black Templar, Eldar, get excited. Then you've got Webway Warriors, an interesting one. You can use the Webway Strike, so putting a unit in Deep Strike, an additional time per battle for each detachment, not auxiliary support detachments in your army. You can only use them if set up units from this attribute in there. So, for example, if you got one detachment, it allows you to use the Webway Strike stratagem twice. Now, this is important because you can now put 2 units in Deep Strike for 2 command points instead of 2 units for 3 command points. So it just saves you command points if you want to put stuff into Deep Strike. Last but not least, Wrath of the Dead. When resolving an attack made by a Wraith Construct, reroll wounds of 1. Cool. That can be really neat with like the big cannons on a Wraith Knight or some Wraith Blades or whatever it is. Reroll wound rolls of 1 in shooting and in close combat. That's pretty neat. And that concludes the Craftworld attributes. I really like the fall back and charge one. And if you're not within 3 inches, consolidate. I think that's crazy powerful, but it still doesn't beat the ability of a Crimson Hunter Exarch to spin 180 degrees and then move, and then spin another 90 degrees. Okay, so now the flesh and blood. Yay! Yay, yay, yay! I'm like a little kid in a school. First of all, Drazar stayed the same points, and Incubi stayed the same points. Come on, GW, you could have done better than that. That's it. You've got a cool name generator for Dark Eldar. Really cool if you have like a kill team or something. Why not? It's cool. I want to call my guy Lixana Duvar or Zindrel the Cruel. Cool. And I like it because you've got Kabalites, Witch Cults, and Homunculus Coven. So I've always had an issue, especially naming Coven. You know, I'm like, what the hell do I name my Homunculus? Drazar, the Master of Blades. Fancy new stuff, right? Pretty neat. Love his new rules. He has an extra wound. He's got lethal precision. All his weapons do 2 damage. He has a 5-up invulnerable save. He gives +1 to wound for friendly incubi, including himself within 6 inches. So he's wounding most things on 3s, a lot of things on 4s, and even knights on 5s. And if he rolls a 6 to wound, it becomes 4 damage. So he could go in with no, it's 6. So he'd need 5s either way. So he needs 6s, 5s. No, he could wound a knight on 4s. Holy crap. He could wound knights on 4s. Oh my goodness. That's because he's strength 5. So strength 5 would need 5s, +1 to wound, needs 4s, 2 damage a pop. He's got 8 attacks if he charges, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, -3 AP, and any 6 would be 4 damage. He's killy. Okay, let's say I'm excited. Incubi, pretty much the exact same. They just added the they added the demiclaves from the index back in. And they changed lethal precision, which is really cool. Lethal precision on a unmodified roll of a 6, add 2 to the damage of the roll. Now this used to be a Clavex only ability, which allowed the Clavex to do up to 3 damage on a 6 to wound. They've added that to the entire unit, which means you're going in a basic Incubi unit, or Incubi has 3 attacks, a +1 strength, so strength 4, which means they are wounding most things on 3s or 4s or 5s even, up to 5s, right? Because of Drazar nearby. And any 6 to wound does 3 damage with 3 attacks a pop. And hitting on 3s or hitting on 2s as it goes later in the game. They're going to hit like a freight train, and they can do a lot of damage against multi-damage weapons. They still die very quickly, though. So we'll see. I'm going to be testing them out, though, so stay tuned for that. But let me know what you think about the new sculpts and the new Drazar down below. I love them. I love them. I like it. I'm excited. But I have been called a chronic optimist. So who knows? Then we have awesome custom-made cabals, custom-made witch cults, and custom-made covens. And oh my goodness, am I excited about them. So, the same as with Space Marines, the same as with the Craftworlders, you can pick 2 to make your own cabal, which is awesome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the Kabalites. Dark Mirth. -1 leadership for enemy units within 6 inches of any unit. So just a around the board -1 leadership, 6 inches. As soon as your opponent fails their first morale test, you add +1 leadership to all the models in your army. Okay. Okay. Not my favorite. Deadly Deceivers. Units with this obsession can charge in a turn in which they fell back. Okay, I'm already liking that. Pretty neat. When an enemy unit finishes a charge within 1 inch, roll a d6, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So it's basically, it's the only thing I don't like about this is 1 mortal wound, no matter how many units are within 6 inches. So it's like on a 6, you do mortal wound. Whoop-de frickin' do. It's probably one of the worst ones. Disdain for lesser beings. When a morale test is taken for a unit, no more than 1 model can flee. That I like. I really like that. It's like the Cursed Blade one, except for Cabal. So you can run giant blobs of 20 Cabalite warriors. Sure. And no matter how many you lose, only 1 will run. So somebody could kill 18 Cabalite warriors, you could have 2 left, and only 1 will flee. And then 1's still left alive. So it saves you command points for morale, and is great for a Horde-style Cabal list, which is pretty neat. Meticulous Flayers. Now, this is a very interesting one. Units with this obsession that have Power from Pain ability, okay, benefit from the Eager to Flay bonus, which is the +1 to hit in close combat. So that means they get the start of +1 to hit in close combat from the start of the game. And if they attack a non-vehicle or titanic unit, so anything that's not a vehicle or titanic, an unmodified roll of a 6 automatically hits and wounds the target. Now that can be really handy. The only thing is most Cabal models only have 1 attack each, so it wouldn't really be that useful unless you ran like Trueborn with pistols and blades. But anything that skips a step mathematically is very, very powerful. So being able to hit on 2s, rolling 1s to hit thanks to an Archon nearby, and any 6 to hit is an automatic wound. Like these are strength 3 models we're talking about. This is nothing crazy. And if you have a power sword or something, you can go in there and do a lot of damage. So this is a secretly powerful one that I like. Then we have Mobile Raiders. Add 3 to the move characteristics of models that can fly, which is like the Flayed Skull one, but it's only the 3-inch move. If you want to move faster, just pick Flayed Skull, because you also get reroll hits like inside your transports, and you also get ignore cover. Now, my favorite is this one, Soulbound. Now, if you like Cabal of the Black Heart because you get a Feel No Pain on all your vehicles, you will like this one because it does pretty much the exact same thing. When an Inured to Suffering roll is made for a model with this obsession, right? So 6 up, Feel No Pain, essentially. Reroll wounds of 1. Reroll a 1. So you get a 6 up, Feel No Pain on your whole infantry army, everything, and then reroll 1s. That's already better than Blackheart. That's pretty cool. Instead of +1 to the Power from Pain, you just get reroll 1s on your Feel No Pains. And units that do not have Power from Pain instead gain the Feel No Pain, which also gives a 6 up Feel No Pain to your vehicles. So your vehicles keep the 6 up Feel No Pain, but now everything that's not a vehicle can reroll 1s on the 6 up ignore damage roll, which is awesome. The only thing you lose is access to Vect and access to the Writ of the Living Muse. Is it worth it? Only access to Labyrinthine Cunning. Maybe. So right now I'm toying with the idea of running a battalion of soulbound Cabalites with another one from this list, it's the next one, and then Envenoms with Drazar, right, and an Archon, essentially, and then running a Cabal of the Blackheart Spearhead, as normal, with Archon Skari that's sitting there with Razor Wings and Planes to get the rerolls to hit and wound and all that stuff. So that's kind of where my head is at the moment. But let me know what you think down below. Then we have Toxin Crafters. This one was previewed. When resolving an attack made with a poisoned weapon by a model with this obsession, an unmodified wound roll of a 6 adds 1 to the damage characteristic. It does not apply to relics. This means that any close combat poison weapon, like Venom Blades, for example, any Venom Blades. So Venom Blades and any poison weapon that's shooting, so rifles, pistols, splinter cannons. I'm looking at Venoms, right? Venoms, 12 shots each at 18 inches of range that hit on 3s, reroll 1s, wound on 4s, but any 6 is 2 damage. That could add up, even against vehicles, you know? It's pretty neat. And then we have Webway Raiders. Very similar to the one that the Ynnari had, which is Webway Warriors. You can use the Webway Portal stratagem an additional time per detachment. You just can only use it on units with the obsession, essentially. Yep, that's about it. So that's pretty cool. I like the Soulbound because it's essentially Blackheart and it's awesome, and Toxin Crafters because it makes your poison weapons dangerously dangerous. Then we have the Witch Cult Obsessions. I'll just pick a couple here. We've got the ones that were in. Actually, I'll just do them all. Are you with me? Still with me? Okay. Acrobatic Display. Within 1 inch of an enemy unit, all Witch Cult units have +1 to their invulnerable save. So that's pretty cool. And if they don't have one, they gain 1. So Hellions get a 6-up within 3 inches of the enemy, etc., etc. The Art of Pain. Whilst they have the Power from Pain ability and they're within 1 inch of the enemy units, they treat the battle round as being 1 higher than it actually is. So that's pretty cool. That means that turn 2 they get +1 to hit, which is when they're going to be hitting in close combat. They become fearless on turn 3 instead of turn 4, as long as they're within 1 inch of an enemy unit. Awesome. Berserk Fugue. When resolving an attack by a melee weapon, when it charged or heroically intervened, or was charged, an unmodified roll of a 6 scores an additional hit. So it's like Tesla in close combat. Awesome. Now you cannot mix this with the Precise Killers, which is the next one. So this one, the Berserk Fugue is roll a 6 to hit, extra hit, unmodified 6. So it just gives you more attacks. Precise Killers is when you roll a 6 to wound, you get +1 AP. So if you have a bunch of witches that have lots of attacks already, extra 6s or extra hits, or 6s to wound have AP1, which means even their basic close combat weapons get an extra AP, or agonizers or power swords or whatever. That's pretty neat. One of my favorite, though, is Slashing Impact. After a model with this obsession finishes a charge move, you can select an enemy infantry, biker, or monster unit, so no vehicle and no vehicle, or no Titanic, or maybe Titanic monster, but if it's got the monster keyword, and roll a d6 on a 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. This makes Hellions in a pack of 20 really dangerous because it's per model. So if you have 20 models that can hit something, you'd roll 20 dice on a 5+, a mortal wound. Awesome. Reaver jet bikes, they basically have impact attacks when they charge. You can also do it for big units of witches, and they're small bases, so they can go too deep, and both of them will be within 1 inch of an enemy model. And it's against the enemy unit. So if you have a big block of 20 witches charging in, that's 20 dice that you could potentially do 5-up mortal wounds when you charge. That is really, really strong. Stimulant Innovators, this is okay. It allows you to use the Hyperstim Backlash stratagem for 1 command point instead of 2, so you can basically use the double drugs for 1 command point instead of 2. It's honestly terrible. Don't take this one. Test of Skill. When resolving an attack made by a model with this obsession against a monster or vehicle unit in which any models have a wounds of 10 or more, add 1 to wound, so +1 to wound against vehicles and monsters essentially that have 10 or more wounds. That can be really useful, essentially makes the strength 3 a little bit more reliable. It makes it go up to toughness 7, you're wounding on 4s, which is pretty cool. No, toughness 6, you're wounding on 4s. It's not bad. It's better than +1 strength against monsters and vehicles. And then we have Trophy Takers. When your enemy takes a morale test, they have to roll 2 dice and discard the lowest. So, meh. I really like the Slashing Impact one. I really like the Test of Skill one. And I really like either Berserk Fugue or Precise Killers. I would personally go for Berserk Fugue because +1 attack is awesome. And then you could go for +1 attack and then +1 to wound or against vehicles. Or when they charge, they do mortal wounds, which I think is just super, super powerful. Last but not least, the Homunculus Covens. Now, Homunculus Covens are cool because there's only one Homunculus Coven, and that Homunculus Coven is Prophets of Flesh. 4-up invulnerable save is pretty much unparalleled in how powerful that is. especially with high toughness, multiple damage. However, there is one in here that rivals that, and I want you to let me know what you would take. And it rivals it not only because it's awesome, but also because it affects the entirety of the army, vehicles included. So I'll get to that one. But first, Hungry for Flesh is one. Add 1 to charge rolls. Pretty decent, especially if you like to run your Grotesque out of Deep Strike. Master of Mutagens. When you're resolving a poison weapon attack against non-vehicle or Titanic, an unmodified hit of a 6 automatically hits and wounds. Cool. No, it's not against relics. So kind of like the same one the Cabal had, but for poison weapons. Awesome. Master of Torturers. The Torturer's craft stratagem only costs 1 command point instead of 2. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Like, am I going to waste one of these things just to be able to use one stratagem for cheaper? I don't think so. Obsessive Collector. When an enemy model is destroyed... Now, this one's crazy. And I'm going to read the wording, and I want you to tell me what you think. I'm going to tell you what I think. When an enemy model is destroyed as a result of an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in a unit from your army with this obsession. So, when an enemy model is killed, great, with a melee in close combat, you can select one model in that unit to regain up to D3 lost wounds. If the attacking model is a rack, you can instead return up to D3 models to that unit, placing them on the battlefield and in unit coherency. So, does that mean I get plus D3 models for each model destroyed? You know, so do I get D3 models for each? So if I go in with a unit of racks and they kill 2 guardsmen, does that mean I get 2 D3 models back? Or is it capped at 1 model? That's something I'm curious. As for grotesques, that's pretty cool. You can kill a couple and you get D3 wounds back on a grotesque. Like, it makes sense for grotesques and talos because they don't come back to life. But with racks, they come back to life. So that could be a pretty cool substitute for black cornucopians, especially against chaff. Experimental creations. Add 1 to strength characteristic of all models with this obsession. So that's pretty cool. Makes Talos strength 9 makes them good strength. When resolving an attack made by a poison weapon against a unit that has a lower toughness, you add 1 to wound. So it means that you running in with your 4+ to wound against guardsmen isn't silly. You can go in and actually wound them better, which is neat. Dark Technomancers. When a unit fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot with, you can enhance its range weapons. If you do so, they basically overheat. So if they roll a 1, they take a mortal wound. But you add 1 to wound roll and add 1 to damage. Now that actually makes liquefiers kind of scary. Imagine going up with a unit of, say, 5 grotesques out of a raider. And they have liquefy guns, and you do that, and they just have that. You can just choose to do it, and then they get +1 to wound and 2 damage flamers. That can be pretty handy. Or say it's on a Talos that has twin liquefier guns. Then again, we'll see. Will the liquefy gun stay outrageously priced, or will the liquefier go down in chapter approved? Other than that, stay tuned, because right now it's unviable because of points. However, it could be terrifying to your opponent to run up with a bunch of liquefier guns that are all 2 damage. Yes. Dark Harvest. After a unit with this obsession finishes a charge move, for each model of that unit, you can select 1 enemy unit. Oh man, it's so much. 5+ 1 mortal wound. So pretty much the slashing impact one, however, for Coven, which is really, really powerful. And last but not least, the one that I was waiting to tell you about, Artists of the Flesh. Now, you can only select this obsession, and you cannot select a second one if you pick this one. And I feel like this one will rival the Prophets of Flesh. And this is the last one, okay? When resolving an attack against a unit with this obsession, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of the weapon. That can be very powerful when combined with vehicles, and when combined with grotesques, and when combined with talos, because now 2 damage weapons are 1 damage, 3 damage weapons are 2 damage, d6 damage weapons are d6 minus 1. All in all of a sudden, your tanks, your talos, your grotesques become all the more powerful as well. So, as I said, what do you think? Do you think a 4-up invulnerable save is still better? Mathematically, yes. But is it worth it to go on Venoms, Raiders, Grotesques, Talos as a -1 across the board damage? That's something that you guys can let me know down in the description below and in the comments, and I will get back to you. The next thing and the last part of the book that we're going to look at are the Ynnari. So, May 2019, Ynnari received a publication in the White Dwarf, and now their rules have been reprinted in Phoenix Rising. So, let's sort of compare and contrast some of the changes that happened in both publications. First and foremost, the one thing that just jumped out at me and I really noticed was that the Incarn, that the Vizark and Ivrain, all 3 units went down in points drastically. So Ivrain is 115 points, back to more of her original point value. Now that Ynnari has kind of gone down in power, I definitely see the change to that, which is fantastic. The Vizark went from 120 points to 80 points. That alone makes him worth taking, even over an Archon. Like, he actually is useful now as a close combat character. And last but not least, the Incarn, the biggest change of them all, goes from 337 points to 280 points. The Incarn is still one of the most powerful in our units. The fact that it's lost all, that many points, it's gone down 50-some points. That is a huge difference when it comes to being able to take all the characters you want. It means that if you wanted to, you're taking all 3 of them for, 500 points or so, which is pretty snazzy. Okay, so let's dive in. If your army's battle forged, you can include Ivrain, the Vizark, or any Craftworld, Harlequins, or Drukhari detachment. So you can still take any of the 3 characters in a Drukhari, Craftworld, or Harlequin detachment without them losing their keywords specifically. You cannot have any Mandrakes, the Avatar Arcane, any Solitaires, or any Homunculus Coven units in those detachments. Every unit in the detachment must be the same faction. Remain Craftworld is the same thing as that. So pretty much the exact same stuff. You basically you change your Craftworld, Cabal, Witch Cult, or Mask on the detachment with Reborn as Riani, Reborn Drukhari, Reborn Harlequin. So it's important to note that when you mix Cabal and Witch Cult in an Ynnari army, they both become Reborn Drukhari, which then allows like Archons to give rerolled hits to witches and things like that as well. Strength from Death is pretty much the exact same. Psychers of the Reborn, etc. Abilities, so that hasn't changed. That's pretty much the same. The biggest change, the point values. Then we have Ivrain. So we have Cat Lady, still power level 6. So she went down a power level, if any of you still play power levels. Her statistics are exactly the same. Her melee weapon is exactly the same. She still has her 4-up invulnerable save. She still has her +1 to cast and deny. She still has the ability to regenerate wounds, and she can still go in any Eldari transport, regardless of that model's transport restrictions. Cool. You can manifest 2 psychic powers, and you can deny 1 psychic powers, and that's it. Cool, same keywords. So nothing changed from her, except her power level went down. Okay, the Vizark went from 6 power level to 4 power level. So cool. Okay, they're re-jerry-rigging the power level on these guys. Same movement, weapon skill, this is same wounds, same attack, same leadership, same save. Okay. Melee weapon does exactly the same thing. So he hasn't really changed. Still the champion. Still reroll hits of 1 made by melee weapons of all Ynnari units within 6. Cool. That's actually really cool. It actually works for things, any Ynnari. So even beast packs from the Drukhari would get that bonus as well. He has a 4 Binvol save, can take hits for Ivrain, and can go in transports as well. Last but not least, the Incarn. Same movement, same weapons ability skill, same toughness, same wounds, same attack, same leadership, same save. Melee weapon does exactly the same. Still has its invulnerable save. Can now still put it on the battlefield. 6 up, feel no pain. Okay, still thing. It's now called something different. It's called Blessings of the Whispering God instead of Ynnari Stirs. Okay. Same difference. Oh, but that... Oh, they did... Oh, no, they changed that. No, it's the same. So still Ynnari units. And Eldari is still Ynnari. Fearless. Yeah, so things are fearless within 6 inches. They changed the one thing into 2 different things. So in Ynnari Stirs is now the fearless, and Blessings of the Whispering God is the feel no pain. So it's not one rule that does 2 things, it's 2 different rules now. So they just did that, I guess. Okay, and that's about it. Now, they have these stratagems. And the stratagems themselves kind of, they changed a little bit, or they put them in different spots. So you still have a lot of them, but they fixed a couple of the wordings on them. So the Artifacts of Death, for example, is the relic stratagem. In the White Dwarf, it's 1 of 3. So you can take 1 relic for extra for 1, or you can take 2 extra relics for 3. They've changed it to more of a Space Marine style, where you can take 1 CP for every relic you take, and there's no limit to the amount of relics you can have. So you can just have 1 relic, 2 relic, 3 extra relics just for 1 command point, which is pretty cool. So that's pretty neat. Then you've got Whispering Spirits, which is the exact same. You've got Ynnari's Net, the exact same. United in Death went from 1 command point to 2 command points, because giving extra attacks to everybody is actually really, really strong. I'm not surprised. Inevitable Fate. Where's the Taste for Death? Oh, that stayed the same. Cool. Inevitable Fate. That's the same. Acolyte of Ynnari. So yep, that's the same. Reborn Together, that's the same. Shrine of the Whispering God went down to 1 command point. And they changed the wording on this. So that was the one that you could get incubi and turn them into Ynnari, essentially. So you get the strength from death and attack first and all that stuff. So in this set, select up to 3 units. Each of these gains strength from death. And then now instead of 2 command points, it's 1 command points. So that's pretty cool. So for 1 command point, your incubi can have strength from death, which is awesome. Then we have Webway Ambush is the same. Exalted of Ynnari, the same. Back from the Brink is the same. They just changed the wording a little bit to clarify it. Great Enemy, same. Fire and Fade, the same. Except it's 1 CP. Deadly Misdirection, the same. Souls are the strongest, and Lightning Fast reflexes or reactions is the same. All in all, the exact same, other than a few stratagems that went down in command points and one that went up in command points. Warlord traits, pretty much the same as well. There wasn't really any many differences or anything like that. Subtract 1, Fear of the Grave, Favored Ynnari, Master of Death. Oh, instead of Master of Death being 2 additional hits, it does 1 additional hit. So they kind of made that a little worse. And then we have Gaze of Ynnari, still the same. Storm of Whispers, which has value of 6. And then they did change one of these psychic powers to be a little different. I'm like, why did you change this psychic power to be a little different? It doesn't make any sense. So basically, they clarified Storm of Whispers. It's you roll 3d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches, and then for each 6 on those dice, they suffer mortal wounds. So if you're around 6 units, each unit takes 3. You roll 3d3 for all 6 different units to do mortal wounds. Word of the Phoenix now, instead of automatically bringing a model back, if you want to bring a model back, it's only on a 4+. So you don't automatically bring a model back just by casting it. So it's a little worse than it was before. Other than that, Unbind Souls, Shield of Ynnari, and Ancestor's Grace are exactly the same. The relics didn't change. You still have the Hungering Blade, which is the same. So it's essentially a reprint with some very, very subtle changes. I don't know how you feel about that. Yes, the White Dwarf is in May, and not everybody got a White Dwarf, so maybe people can get it. But the thing about changing things so frequently is that little things like 1 command point here, 1 command point there, changing it confuses people. If you do it too often, don't really highlight it. So unless you're reading every line, it's very easy to miss that sort of thing, and then people make mistakes and whatnot, and that can be a pain in the neck as well. Hungering Blade is the exact same. Song of Ynnari is the exact same. Mirror Gaze is the exact same. Soul Snare seems like it is the exact same. Yeah. The Lost Shroud is the same, and Korag High's Locket. Yep, it's the same. And we got the tactical objectives, which seem about the same, and that would be the end of the book. So that is Phoenix Rising. Make sure you stay tuned. Check the links down below, as I'll be doing a full, comprehensive Drukhari mix of what sort of Cabal, Coven, and other things you've been watching. Thanks a lot for tuning into this. I really appreciate it. A huge shout out to all the channel Patreons. Thanks to your generous support, I get to do things like this, and I hope you enjoy it. Check me out on Twitch as well. We do a daily painting stream. Just Put Paint on It is what it's called. If you'd like to support the channel, links down below. Share, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I am Skari, and I have been your grateful host. And until next time, Skari out.